Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto and Tayuya fell in love after he saved her and bring her to Konaha part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Arrow Senin, it's been 3 days. Where the hell are you taking us? We're almost there. Give it about 5 more minutes, and you'll see why I said nobody will come bother us once we're there. Soon enough, the trees ended, and the trio arrived at a beach. Welcome to the eastern edge of Hai no Kuni, Jiraiya announced. A bridge extended out into the ocean, broken in more than one place, far enough that it didn't seem to end. Choppy waves, gray and fierce, rolled onto the sand beneath them. It was high tide, and the land was angry. Thunder rolled in the distance, before lightning split the water beneath. It's been like this since the end of the Second War, almost 40 years ago. My suspicion is that someone died with their hand on a barrier defense post, and that connection keeps chakra circulating even though the person who cast the jutsu is dead. A permanent defense against enemies, even in death and destruction. Where are we, though? I don't recognize this place. Tayuya said. Yeah, and I've never heard about anything like this being in Hai no Kuni. What's going on? I told you, welcome to the country's eastern edge. However, I left something else out. Welcome to the western edge of the ruins of Uzu no Kuni. Uzu no Kuni. That sounds like. Yes, and there's good reason for that. Uzu no Kuni is the nation that housed Uzushiogakure, which was wiped out near the end of the Second War by the combined efforts of Iwagakure, Kumogakure, and Kurigakure. There were no survivors. A ninja village that got taken off the map. Did they have powerful clans? Tayuya asked. There was only one in Uzushio, but they were like the Hyuga or Uchiha, big enough that inter-clan marriages weren't incestuous due to the sheer size of their clan, and they were larger than both of those groups combined. Spill the beans. Naruto said. The people that lived in Uzushio were the Uzumaki clan. Jiraiya said, a somber look in his eyes as Naruto locked onto him. Your mother's family. And my father. I'm not allowed to tell you. My sensei passed a law, years back, that said you were to be told on your 18th birthday or whenever a sitting Hokage sees fit. The law was broken when you were told about the Kyuubi, and I broke it right now, but I don't think you should know everything just yet. I didn't agree with the mandate, but I thought you deserved to know something about your heritage. I'm going to turn 18 before we're back in Konaha in 3 years. Why not just tell me now? Jiraiya grinned. There you go, always hungry for more, that's good. The other reason is, you're not strong enough to live outside of his shadow. Now, come on, let's get inside those ruins and through the perimeter defense before we manage to get fried. The older ninja took off, leaving Naruto and Tayuya behind. The pair shared a knowing look before running after him. That son of a bitch knows. Tayuya growled. Leave it be, besides, I already know the truth. Whether or not he tells me is grounds to know whether or not I can trust him. Itachi had been right about him, Naruto knew. He wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice his relationship with one person if it meant that he could protect many more. That was what it meant to be Hokage, wasn't it? The entire village would be his to lead, and he'd learned as a child that good leaders couldn't play favorites. That having been said, he knew that both the Sandaime and Godime Hokage had definitely made a favorite out of him. For one, it was because an out-of-control Jinchuriki would have been a catastrophe. For the other, it was because he reminded her of her dead brother, and husband. No, he decided as he sped up, quickly reaching and then outpacing Jiraiya. When he became Hokage, he wouldn't play favorites. He ignored the sun-weathered corpses of those who had been struck by the lightning around him, though the bolts never came near to touching him. In spite of the unsheathed sword on his back, he seemed to act the opposite of a lightning rod. Just as Jiraiya had said, a woman's corpse was attached to a chakra siphoning. Naruto didn't have a word for what it was. A dark blue ball, with streaks of white running through it where her hand was fixed, which stood atop a small stone stand. Behind her stood the shattered gates to Uzushiogakure, with the wall visibly cracked or missing pieces in several places. Just leave her there, Jiraiya said. The barrier that her chakra gives this land is enough that we won't be bothered until we're gone. With a heavy heart, looking at the first other Uzumaki he'd ever seen in the flesh, Naruto followed behind his mentor into the destroyed Uzushiogakure. What he saw horrified him. He knew it was an illusion. It had to be. Even so, he couldn't look away. Lightning came down with the rain, blood running to mix with water in the streets. Without warning, Doden techniques caused the surrounding buildings to begin crumbling. Children and civilians rushed about in the streets, kunai embedding themselves in the backs of those who sought to flee. Water rose up from outside the village walls, smashing into them and flowing over the top. Enemies from 3 nations overran the streets of Uzushiogakure, and the screams of the dying were louder than the thunder overhead. No survivors. An Iwagakure shinobi ordered. We'll show Konaha what happens when they attack our allies in Omegakure, but we'll do a better job. You will do no such thing. A man's voice declared, before a katana was shoved straight through the enemy's heart. The man's red hair rested in a mop, his bushy beard left untamed and wiry. Blood matted his clothing, and his Uzushiogakure headband was scratched all over. Ha, you think you can win, Uzukage? We outnumber your whole force 3-1. It's not about victory. It's about survival. The Uzukage's eyes narrowed, taking in his surroundings. Besides, I've already bought my wife enough time to have escaped. You've made me a very angry man, you know. I was going to be a father. If it's a boy, he'll be named Kaoru. If it's a girl, she'll be named Kushina. Now, face death. His movements were blurry, cutting through wave after wave of enemies even after he was the last Uzumaki standing. Nay, halt. A newcomer's voice rang out, and Shimura Danzo came into view before the gates with a group of his shadowy forces. Danzo, your arrival, how did you know we needed help? No, it doesn't matter. Please, help us win this fight. The Uzukage turned around, running off, and never saw the blade of vacuumed wind that took his head off. Nay, advance. The ruthless order left Danzo's lips, and the triple alliance between Iwa, Kumo and Kiri began to die en masse to the blades of Konoha's ghostly fighting force. When the rain cleared at last, all that remained were the rubble and bodies that littered the ground. No trace remained of the Uzukage's murderer, or even the bodies of his village's assailants. The genjutsu faded, and Naruto sank to his knees, with a shaking Tayuya beside him and Jiraiya hanging his head in front of them both. That was your maternal grandfather, Uzumaki Josuke. Father of Uzumaki Kushina, the Nadaime Uzukage. I was in Aim no Kuni at the time, training my own team. The wistful look in Jiraiya's eyes told the younger ninja that something had happened to that team. Naruto knew it was irrational to be attached to the dead who had been gone for years before his birth. Before his mother's birth. Even so, this was beyond painful. He had never known them, would never know them, but they were his family all the same and he had seen them slaughtered. He only had one question. Who is Danzo? A man who should have been eliminated a long time ago. Jiraiya's expression hardened. He was a teammate of my sensei, and the second choice for Sandaime Hokage. His ambition is limitless, second only to his twisted sense of loyalty to Konoha. He offers support to Tsunade, but only in vocal amounts. None of his Nei Anbu's boots are ever seen on the ground, and they don't associate with the regular forces. Danzo is their leader, and until he becomes Hokage, they will not bow to the ruler of Konoha. Then it won't be an issue if I kill him. Vengeance for my grandfather, if nothing else. Danzo, that name rings a bell. Tayuya said, straightening her back. I think he was one of Orochimaru's partners in Fuinjutsu experiments and ninjutsu creation. Orochimaru is the one who gave him his replacement arm. Then it's not just an arm. Damn it. You're not the only one with a bone to pick against him, Naruto. It's rumored that Danzo was the one who actually ordered the Uchiha massacre, and if that's true, in addition to working with Orochimaru. Jiraiya started swearing. There's gonna be a lot of people who want his head on a platter. Naruto finished their collective thought process. But you can't go out in the open with it, otherwise, he'll run. So the best course of action is to just keep training. Tayuya said. Much as I hated to admit it, she's right. So, time to start. By the time I'm through with you, you'll be too tired to think about revenge. Jiraiya was right, Naruto admitted to himself. Burying himself in thoughts of revenge would leave him vulnerable to the trap that Sasuke had fallen into. It hadn't mattered to him before, and it shouldn't matter after. If anything, he should be angrier at the ninja who'd done the most killing, but it was war. Kill your enemy, or die. Danzo's murder of his grandfather hadn't been war, it had been betrayal. That was something more despicable than most Nukenin would commit, with the notable exceptions of people like Orochimaru or Itachi, and even then. To arrive nearly too late to aid your ally in a time of war, only to murder them. That was sickeningly cruel, beyond anything Naruto had seen before. He would throw everything he had into the training. Maybe Jiraiya could earn his trust in ways besides learning about his parents. It had been 3 months since the trio had left Konaha. Naruto sat outside the gates of Uzushio, the small hill allowing him to look out over the sea with a slightly raised vantage point. After the first week, he'd started to occasionally come down and talk to the still warm corpse of the woman who'd died attached to her attack station. While Jiraiya oversaw his clones' work in achieving muscle memory, chakra control, and basic calligraphy, another team of clones was working on restoring the village from its destroyed state. Even though he didn't intend on living in the remnants of the past, he still felt a familial duty to avoid leaving the village in shambles. Once, a building's restoration had revealed a collection of scrolls. Jiraiya had surmised that it was the Uzukage's office building, similar to the Hokage Tower in Konaha. The discovery that he could retain the memories of his clones, as well as improve his ability slightly for every clone that trained, had been an immense step forward for him. So anyway, Shiki-chan, I'm getting better at Fuinjutsu. Has anyone ever told you that it's fucking fucked up to talk to dead people like they're here? Tayuya walked over to him, knowing where to find him in the event that he disappeared. I don't care. Besides, my sensei spends time every day standing at the memorial and talking to his teammates, probably my dad, too. If he does it, it can't be that bad. Piss brain, do you know how infamous Hatake Kakashi is? No. Iwa and Kumo both have a flea on-site issue for him, and Orochimaru was more worried about fighting Kakashi than Jiraiya when the invasion of Konoha took place. He had almost 100 confirmed kills in the Third Great War, including the last Sanbi Jinchuriki. That was when he was younger than we are, and we aren't even half of his age. Tayuya-chan, I have a question. How the fuck do you always know so much about anything? Unlike you, piss for brains, I take the time to look through mission dossiers so that I know who I should and shouldn't fucking fight. Fuck that, I'll fight anyone. That attitude's gonna get you killed one day, asshole. The fuck would I do then? Find a safer job, I guess. What kind of question is that? I don't know. Looks like being around you for so long has made me go soft. Damn it, what a pain. First you kick Shikamaru's ass, now you steal his catchphrases. What's next? Are you going to slump over and mutter, Mendokus, under your breath like he does every time Ino's being a bitch about something? Not a bad idea, Oni-chan. Maybe you should take that habit up too. Come on, Tayuya-chan. Don't fuck with me like that. Would you rather I just fuck you, instead? Naruto closed his eyes, frowning as he let a breath out. This is why I keep complaining about you to Shiki-chan. Are you just that unimaginative, or did you think it would be edgy to name a girl's dead fucking body, Death? Because if it's the first one, I'm sorry, but if it's the second one then I'm gonna punch your lights out. Hey, what the hell do you mean you complain about me, asshole? Honestly, all your attempts to be lewd. It's pretty obvious you're not doing it because oh god, you love me, and nobody's ever seriously tried to be that way with me. I'm not saying it makes me uncomfortable. That'd be a bullshit double standard given that Ero Sennin peeps in every onsen he can, but. Piss brain, we sleep together. You're my personal space heater at night. And that's fine, he assured her. I'm used to it, It's not an invasion of space for you to be right next to me. Hell, half the time when you're near me I barely even. A quick, unexpected kiss on the cheek was enough to shock Naruto into silence. Oh, thank fuck. You stopped talking. Tayuya giggled. I'm gonna go now, but you and I are gonna talk later, alright? Alright. Tayuya left, heading back through the gateway, leaving Naruto by himself once again. So anyway, Shiki-chan, today is my day off for physical training and my clones are getting run into the ground learning Fuinjutsu calligraphy. Arrow Sennin also put a chakra limitation seal on me that he can remotely deactivate, so I can focus on controlling my chakra without worrying about wasting any. I think that's cool. Unconsciously, his eyes kept moving from the seascape before him to the navy blue ball on his left, Shiki-chan's, hand still attached. I wonder how you work this thing. Naruto wondered. Arrow Sennin said he thinks the chakra works itself into a loop, keeping your jutsu active as it's running through your body. If that's true, I could probably replace all your chakra with mine. Let's see. Just put my hand on it. Slowly, with no small amount of anticipation, Naruto reached his hand out and began to send chakra flowing to the orb, but it wasn't until his hand actually touched the defensive station that he knew he'd made a mistake. White-hot pain sent itself through his body, and the Kyuubi screamed at him to pull away, but he couldn't. The magnetism anchoring his hand to that ball was greater than any force Naruto had ever come into contact with. Slowly, he could hear the demon inside of him less and less, until its voice faded out completely. Welcome to the labyrinth, a disembodied voice told him. Find the exit, and you may leave. Well, that sounds easy enough. Naruto said to himself. If I find anybody else, can I take them with me? There are 3 others. If they find the exit, they may leave. Do I get a map? On the wall before him, a map revealed itself. Wow, this is a big ass fucking maze. The map erased itself, but Naruto had found everything he needed just from those 5 seconds. He'd spent his childhood navigating the underbelly of Konaha. One puny chakra-based maze was gonna be a walk in the park. The maze itself was built in a spiral, reminiscent of a whirlpool. True to form, the exit was in the very center of the maze, not at any of the corners. The other 3 people in the labyrinth had all started in separate corners, and now it was time to find them. The first person he came across was a small red-headed girl. Hey, Naruto said. What's your name? Ah, get away from me. The maze sent you after me, didn't it? He had shadow clones patrolling the maze, disappearing whenever they found dead ends. Somehow they'd missed this girl, but Naruto knew she was going down a dead-end path. He had her cornered. I'm not here to get you. I want to help you. Naruto called out, sitting down in front of her. Can you tell me your name? Uzumaki Rei. Okay, Rei. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm stuck in here with you. There's 2 other people in here besides us. We're gonna find them, and then we're gonna get out of here together. Okay. Okay. Rei gave a big smile. Naruto didn't know how long she'd been in here, but it had to have been before Uzushio fell. You wanna ride on Naruto Oni-chan's back? He smiled back at her. Sure. Thanks, Oni-chan. Just like that, the 2 were on their way. The next person he found was a boy, about the same age as Rei. Ni-chan, she yelled, jumping down from Naruto's back and ran. Rei Oni. The boy yelled back, running toward her, and they met in the middle for a hug. Kuga ni, this is Naruto Oni. He found me, and we're gonna find our way out. Are you 2 twins? Naruto laughed. Yeah, Rei said. He's my little brother. Good to meet you, Kuga. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. If Rei Oni trusts you, then I do too. Let's get going, we've spent way too much time in here already. Hey, hold on. Out of curiosity, how old are you 2? 8. They raised their hands, holding up 4 fingers on each. Okay. Do you know how long you've been in here? Do you know who the Hokage is? If he was right, they would say the Sandaime, Sarutobi Hiruzen. What's a Hokage? Rei asked. The leader of Konohagakure. You know, Uzushio's big ally. It was formed by the Senju and the Uchiha clans, like, forever ago. The Senju and the Uchiha? Kuga asked. Yeah, do you know who they are? Of course we do, Rei said, with all the indignance of a child who'd been asked if she knew basic math. Our cousins are Senju Hashirama and Tobirama, and Uchiha Madara and Izuna. Oh. Okay. Let's get a move on, alright. We don't wanna take up any more time in here than we have to now, huh? She'd been killing his clones. He didn't know what to make of that. Now, he stood in front of her, with Rei and Kuga behind him. Who are you? She asked. Not a clone this time. He said. I'm trying to get these two to the exit. Trying to find you, to get you to the exit. You've been going in a circle. I meant your name. Oh, right, oops. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. A blonde Uzumaki, she said, her gaze shifting between him and the twins behind him. My dad wasn't one of us. I'm from Konaha. How many years has it been, outside? Since the village fell. 37. Then I've been here for 36. I gave birth to my daughter in Konaha, and came back here. She was left in Mito's care. My name is Uzumaki Oboro, wife of Josuke. That makes you my grandmother. Naruto said. Both of my parents died the night I was born, but my mother was Uzumaki Kushina. How? I don't know. I'm a Jinchuriki, though. My father died sealing the Kyuubi into me. I think mom was just a collateral casualty. I have lost my husband, I have lost my siblings and parents, I have lost the daughter I never knew, but I have a grandson. Oboro's facial expression was unreadable, pained and yet somehow elated. There's no point in focusing on everything I've lost. She continued. I'll move forward, with you. Soon enough, they found the exit, and after making certain that the other three went ahead first, he followed into the white ceiling matrix in the center of the labyrinth. The same burning hot sensation went through him, and the feeling of the Kyuubi in his gut came back gradually. He was on the ground, looking up at Tayuya and Jiraiya. Tayuya-chan, Ero Sennin, how long was I out? 2 days. You're not the one who should be asking that question, Mago-kun. Oboro said, picking herself up off the ground. That's a question for Rei and Kuga. Naruto hopped up and looked over to the other side of the labyrinth stone, seeing both children. Naruto. Jiraiya began. What the hell happened? Tayuya finished. So you're telling me that I was right in guessing what it was, and those who didn't have permission to use it would be sucked into that maze. If it doesn't recognize the chakra's signature, then yes, it will pull you in. I used it in a last-ditch effort to keep the village from being invaded and ransacked after its destruction. Oboro said. But then, why were your body, and Naruto's, still here? Those two, Jiraiya motioned to Rei and Kuga, didn't have bodies. I never cut off my chakra flow for the technique. It's likely that those two didn't use any chakra at all, but because they have chakra, they were more susceptible to its pull. Yeah, we can do some really cool stuff. Kuga said. Watch this one. The twins weaved their hand seals seamlessly, though each one went through different motions, and they pointed their hands out toward the ocean. With a horrendous roar, flames exploded outward in a cone before lightning shot forth from the center of the vortex. The flaming gyro widened further, and a pressure jet of water spewed with enough force that Jiraiya and Oboro could cleanly see the electrical current get bisected. That was a feat that only one other technique had accomplished, as far as Jiraiya knew, Hatake Kakashi's Reikiri, the lightning blade. Ah, that always makes me hungry. Rei said as the technique finished, a pained look on her face. Still, that's our favorite area attack. Hashirama Itoko said that one day, we might even be strong enough to beat him and Madara Itoko combined. Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara. Jiraiya said, his brain filling in the blanks for the only people he'd ever heard of with those names. That's what they told me when I found them. They'd never heard of Konaha, or the Hokage. Naruto said. Are you saying they've been stuck in there for almost a century? Konaha was formed when Hashirama and Madara finally put everything aside and joined forces. That was more than 80 years ago, and they were almost 30 when that happened. 30. No, You must be talking about a different Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara than our cousins. They're 2 years older than us, so they should be 10 years old. Kuga said. Oh boy, Naruto groaned. Let me handle this, I'm good with kids. He took both of them by the hand, wandering off. So, you're Jiraiya, all grown up. Oboro looked at him. You got tall. You know me. You were Hiruzen's student. One of three. You, the Shodaime Hokage's granddaughter, and the one they called White Snake. Tsunade is the Hokage now. Orochimaru turned out to be too dangerous to allow inside Konoha's walls. My generation's Danzo, as it were. My condolences. Then, when we stood tall, we were proud to not have a single Nukenin from our ranks, but the loss or betrayal of a comrade is never something that can be taken easily. A pain that we all have to bear. Jiraiya added. The life of a ninja is a life of loss, and death, and regret. I'm trying to make sure that I don't have any more regrets once I'm gone, and your grandson is one of them. I'm his godfather. Then he's in good hands. I hope. You weren't exactly the most studious shinobi, from all I heard. War turns you into a quick study. 2 wars turns you into an expert. A 3rd war. Yeah, let's get you up to speed. Do you know how long you were in that maze? It didn't feel like much. Maybe a few hours. Kuga asked, hopeful. No, not even close. It's been almost 100 years. What? No way. You're joking, aren't you? Any day now, the clan wars are going to end and we can settle down peacefully, for good. At least, that's what Hashirama and Madara both say. I hate to break it to you, but there's no getting around it. Hashirama and Madara are both died about 65 years ago. Liar. Nobody could kill them, Ray said, angry and beginning to pout. They killed each other. Naruto dropped the words like bombs, watching the shocked and horrified expressions on the twins' faces. There's a valley between Hai no Kuni and Oto no Kuni that's dedicated as the battleground where they fought each other to the death. We call it the Valley of the End, because it's where they fought their final battle. What about Tobirama and Izuna? What happened to them? Senju Tobirama was the Nadaime Hokage, after his brother's death. I've never heard of Uchiha Izuna, so he probably died before the end of the warring clans period. Are you being serious, Naruto Oni? This isn't a big joke. I like jokes. I like jokes a lot. This isn't one of them. I'm from Konohagakure no Sato. The warring clans period ended 80 years ago, and it was replaced by the hidden village system where groups of ninja from different clans allied in the same land. Think about it. Was this village here when you touched that stone? I can't remember. Tu-san said he was gonna start building a village here when the wars were over, though. Kuga said. Is that what this is? The Uzumaki village. That's what it was. Before I was born, it got destroyed. My mother was born in Konaha after it was wiped out, and Oboro Obaa-chan is my grandmother who was stuck in that stone with you too. The 4 of us are the only Uzumaki left. What? The twins cried out simultaneously. I'm sorry. It's true. But hey, if you hadn't gotten stuck in there, you never would have met me. Instead of worrying about what you've lost, think about everything that's still out here. You're kids, you should have fun, not worry about fighting for survival every day. But we need to get more powerful. Then train with me. 3 Uzumaki are always stronger than 1. The 2 children nodded, their inner turmoil crushed by the elder Uzumaki's charisma. That was just the kind of effect Naruto had on people, and children were especially susceptible. They would likely have doubts and reminisce painfully in the future on all the things they had missed, and he wouldn't be able to protect them from that misery forever, but they deserved the chance to live the lives that they had been given. Just because they were born in the past, didn't mean that they would belong to that past. They had a future, and Naruto was determined not to let the newest additions to his family live with any other road before them, no matter how bad it made him feel to sideline their feelings about having lost everyone they used to know and love. It was clear that they had really cared for Hashirama and Madara. That thought made Naruto wonder how the clan wars, and the founding of Konoha, would have gone if these Uzumaki children had been there for it. Hi, Naruto Oni-sama. Good. You've managed to clear away a decent section of the rubble. Oboro said, walking around. The village is empty, and in disrepair, but it's not broken anymore. Thank you. Ah, it was nothing. I figured it was the least I could do, out of respect. Anyone else would have done the same. Naruto replied. No, they wouldn't have. His grandmother remained grateful, if stern. They would have looted it, like the scrolls you took from the office. But, since you're my grandson, I guess I can overlook it. Without warning, Naruto enveloped the older woman in a hug. I never had a family. He told her. I lived in the street for 15 years, all I had was a name that I didn't know the meaning of. Poor boy, it's okay now. You have a family, and we aren't going to leave you. I promise. Bones rattled in the wind, and the pair looked down to see a severed skull roll backward toward its headless corpse. In one hand was a sword they both recognized, Naruto from the Genjutsu, and Oboro from being married to its wielder. Josuke. She looked to Naruto. Please, excuse me, I'd like to be alone now. The younger Uzumaki nodded, vanishing in a smooth shunshin that would have been impossible before he'd left Konaha. It must be a hard thing, he thought, to finally come to face the loss of a family you'd known. I told you we'd talk later, didn't I? Tayuya had him cornered. Keep in mind, it only feels like a few hours for me, okay? I'm sorry, I didn't know what I was. She smacked him with her palm, and then on the other cheek on a backhand swing. Don't you dare. She exploded at him. Don't you dare apologize to me. You stupid son of a bitch, we thought you died. You don't get to apologize. No. There were tears in her eyes. Stop it. No. His arms reached around, pulling Tayuya close to him while immobilizing her. I'm not gonna. You son of a, you don't get to cry for me. Not until I'm really dead, and you've seen my scars. I can't die. That logic is bullshit, and you know it. I don't care. Naruto sighed. Well, maybe I do. You may not think it, but I actually like you. I think I'm okay with calling you my friend, and you're the first one I've had since I went to Orochimaru. So I'm gonna be fucking worried when your stupid ass decides to do some kind of shit that looks like it kills you. I'm sorry. He sank to the floor, carrying her with him, holding onto her as she stopped trying to break herself free. I'm so sorry. That was when Tayuya finally broke, letting loose the tears she'd been trying to keep in. Even if he wasn't dead, she and Jiraiya had thought he was. They stayed like that for a few minutes, holding and being held. Finally, Naruto's grip loosened, and Tayuya was free. I'm gonna stay mad about that for a while. She told him, tear tracks still visibly fresh in her eyes as she looked at him. To her surprise, he looked like he'd silently cried with her. You have a right to. He whispered back, so low that even her refined hearing barely picked it up. But you deserve to know that I really am sorry about what happened. I got curious. It hurt like hell when I touched it, like my hand was gonna get washed off by acid. And that maze was huge. About half the size of Konaha. I was being stupid. I know. I've never made a whole lot of smart decisions, I just kind of make do with however I can play to my strengths. That ball, since Rei and Kuga were sucked in there long before the clan wars ended, is an endless nightmare unless you've spent time really learning how to study a map, and even then, if you ask the right question, you're fine. Sounds like you didn't have that much of a problem anyway, piss brain. Well, if she was calling him that name again, then she was feeling at least a little bit better. It got better once I found those three in there. Company always makes traveling better. Even mine. Naruto couldn't tell whether the girl was fishing for a compliment, or genuinely worried about how he saw her. Especially yours. He replied. It's never a bad thing to have a friend along. His smile came on like it had been cued, lighting up his face and bringing a small grin to hers. Unfortunately, she couldn't stay mad at that face. Okay, fine, you win. I fucking forgive you, asshole. He felt like he'd just won the lottery. Naruto's training resumed the next day, and he knew that Jiraiya's sadism was his way of venting frustration at him. Still, He was glad for the harder training. It made thinking a little easier when he was focused on doing other things. His clones were broken up into 3 groups: Fuinjutsu, Taijutsu, and Ninjutsu. While each of them worked in their assigned areas, and a smaller group of clones continued his restoration efforts, Jiraiya had amplified the pressure of the chakra limitation seal as well as add what he called a slog seal. It will make it feel like you're moving through mud, or a strong water current. Jiraiya had told him. So then, when you take it off, you'll be a whole hell of a lot faster. This is the first level of the seal. When you get used to it and can move like you always do, I'll give you the next level. The exercises he went through after that had been put on him were completed very slowly, slow enough that Naruto had been suspicious about whether or not Jiraiya's true motivation was just to be able to write more of his supposedly prize-winning smut novellas. Lust was a terrible vice, that was the only conclusion he could come to. Wrath, greed and pride were the standard shinobi sins, and envy could also be passed off as reasonable. Lust, gluttony and sloth, though. There weren't many ninja who ascribed to those. In Naruto's opinion, Jiraiya was a student of all 3. Still, the blonde had to admit to himself that the older man knew what he was doing. Even though they had only worked on control exercises and non-elemental techniques so far, he already felt like he'd come leaps and bounds ahead of where he'd been. Plus, the Kage Buki no Jutsu, which allowed him to make replicas of his weapons, was a fun area of effect attack. Jiraiya had said, however, that they would start elemental techniques in the near future. It looked like that day was today, a week after his return from the labyrinth. He and Tayuya stood with Rei and Kuga, with Jiraiya and Oboro standing in front of their ragtag quartet. Alright, moment of truth. Jiraiya said. Luckily, Naruto, your efforts to clear away debris from the village gave me the chance to find some chakra paper. What that does is tell you your affinities for elemental chakra. For example, my primary affinity is Kaden, and I have a secondary affinity for Doden techniques. That means it takes less chakra for me to perform jutsu with those 2 elements. Some people have an immensely strong affinity for one element and no secondary affinity, but that's less common than having one strong and one weak nature. Every so often, you come across some weird jackass who's got 3 or more affinities, though that's usually due to having a Kekkei Genkei or being a Jinchuriki. In all of recorded history, though, there have only ever been 2 people with an affinity for all 5 elements. Who? The Rakudo Sennin, if you believe in his legend, and my sensei, which is the real reason he earned the nickname, Shinobi no Kami, during the First Great War. The older a shinobi gets, the deadlier they are, and not many ninja live to their 80s. Oboro added, when the clan wars were at their height, everybody was fair game, because you never knew who could grow up to kill you. When every war starts, ninja of all ages are sent off to the battlefield, and the young are always the first to die. Deprive a village of its elder, stronger shinobi, and you cripple it, slaughter their children, their next generation, and you've finished them. The Sandame's only problem was that he was too old to keep up, physically, with Orochimaru. His chakra reserves were almost as large as an Uzumaki, and he still maintained all his wits, but an old man doesn't have the strength or speed to keep up with someone 30 years younger. Jiraiya added. Hey, before you get lost in that train of thought, you said something about chakra paper and elemental affinities. You can get sentimental later. Naruto said. Right, sorry. Anyway, you charge a little bit your chakra into these little slips of paper, the Sannin held one up to exemplify, and it'll have an effect on the paper that will tell you your affinity. Futon cuts it in half, Kaden burns it, Suiden makes it damp, Raiden will leave a scorch mark where you hold it, and Doden will make it crumble into dust. He handed out a slip of paper to each of the children, and the 2 older ninja watched the proceedings. Rei and Kuga's papers both became damp, though Rei's had a blackened mark and Kuga's lit itself on fire, and they showed each other in excitement. Those effects had happened simultaneously, leading Jiraiya and Oboro to a strange conclusion. The twins didn't have secondary affinities, but 2 equally strong elemental natures. While they shared a Suiden affinity, Rei had a Raiden nature and Kuga had a Kaden nature. Tayuya's crumbled, but the dust was wet and blackened. She had a primary Doden affinity, as could be expected from someone born in Iwa no Kuni, with Suiden and Raiden as secondary affinities, that made Jiraiya raise an eyebrow, as it was likely a product of Orochimaru's experiments, or the girl was just that talented, and nobody had bothered to find out. All eyes were on Naruto, whose paper practically exploded. Ah, he said, throwing the ashes and shaking his hand. Geez, kid, I told you to just use a little bit. Here, try again. Jiraiya laughed, handing another piece of chakra paper to his student. Just to be safe, though, he strengthened the seal limiting Naruto's chakra. Slowly, painfully slowly, the paper began to tear itself across the middle. As its top half burned, Jiraiya could see the scorch mark forming around his fingers as the bottom half became wet. A primary affinity for futon, with secondary affinities for Kaden, Raiden, and Suiden. It looked like he'd inherited all four of his parents' elemental natures, maybe a side effect of being a Jinchuriki whose mother was also a Jinchuriki, so his chakra coils had steeped in the Kyuubi's energy from conception. Maybe a byproduct of the Shiki Fuin having been used to seal the Kyuubi, an unintended consequence leaving him to inherit his parents' power. There was no way to tell, really. He would just have to make it work into the boy's training. My affinities are a primary for Suiden, and a secondary for futon. Oboro added, but I know a few jutsu from all the 5 basic natures, so I can help all of you a little bit. Now that we know what elements to train you in, it's time to really get to making you work for your education. Jiraiya's grin, directed at the older children, promised 2 of things. He was going to have a lot of fun with this. Naruto and Tayuya weren't. My area of expertise is genjutsu. Tayuya said. We were all good at something. Sakin and Ukin were our assassination specialists. Kidomaru was a ranged fighter. Jirobo was our healer and our close quarters expert. She decided to leave out that Kimimaro, with his Kekkei Genkei, had easily been stronger than all 5 of them combined. That having been said, she took pride in having been second strongest of the Sound 4. Okay, how would you rank your skills, D to S, from your time under Orochimaru? Jiraiya asked. Taijutsu, C. Ninjutsu, B. Genjutsu, S. I could also summon a trio of Doki demons, but I haven't been able to after you found me, since they were connected to my demonic flute. It had been 4 months since the younger ninja had discovered their chakra natures amid Uzushiogakure's ruins, which were looking much less ruinous thanks to Naruto's efforts. In fact, the place was even starting to look livable. That was impressive. Alright, how do you feel about your skills now, including what I've taught you? You move through Fuinjutsu a little quicker than Naruto, even though he's still ahead of you. Taijutsu's a B now, ninjutsu's up to an A. Genjutsu's still an S. Fuinjutsu is. I'll give myself a D there, just because it's still new to me. Well, that's an honest assessment. Not bad, either. How's the suppression seal I gave you? Working, far as I can fucking tell. Good to know. Any pain or discomfort? No, it's fine. Excellent. Tayuya almost laughed. You sound like a doctor, birdshit sensei. Jiraiya sighed, shaking his head. I get no respect from you kids. Well, maybe that's 'cause you're just not respectable. Ever think about that? I'm one of the Sannin. I fought in 2 wars. What's not respectable about that? Well, there's the peeping, the smut writing, the listening in whenever I try to have a private conversation with piss for brains over there. Point taken. Still, as far as ninja go, it's hard to get to my level. Never said you weren't a respectable ninja. You're just not fucking respectable as a man. Okay then, hit me with your strongest genjutsu. I'll show you what I'm made of. Are you sure? Jiraiya nodded, and Tayuya shook her head. Raising her flute to her lips, she channeled chakra into her lips and fingertips before beginning to play. He let the sound come to him, fully immersing himself in the illusion. He sat with Tsunade, side by side, as she held her infant son. I can't do this, she said. Tsunade, please. I know it's hard, I know he's gone, but nothing. Tsunade roared. This is my decision, not yours. The reaction made him cower slightly. I know, Haim. I just wanted you to think. Think about what, Jiraiya? Dan is dead. It took me months to move on after Nawaki died. All I have left are you and Orochimaru and Sensei. I can't do this. I can't take it. The baby began to cry. I'm leaving, Jiraiya. It's better for me to be by myself. That way, you won't end up dead too. I can't die, Haim Ukn. Don't call me that, ever again. I'm not your princess, I'm not this village's princess, I'm nobody's princess. I'm a failure as a shinobi, and I can't just leave him to that life, where he'll die too because he's connected to me and my curse. You take him. Me? Raise a kid? Are you joking? Oh, so Orochimaru should do it. The look of consternation on her face told him all he needed to know. I don't think you should give him up. He deserves the chance to know who his parents were. And Dan didn't deserve to die. Jiraiya stood up, a glare in his eyes, and Tsunade was confused. She was used to Jiraiya being a braggart, a joker and a man who took himself and his words far too seriously. She wasn't comfortable with being on the receiving end of his anger. Fine. Give him to me. Now, all of a sudden, she was reticent to give her son up. Give him to me. Wordlessly, as she handed the bundled baby up to him, he looked away from her. I hope he never finds out who his parents are, because I certainly won't tell him. I hope I never see you again, either, you rotten bitch. What? Like running away is going to solve your problems. When Hiruzen Sensei brands you a nukenin, don't come crying to me. He shut the door gently behind him as he walked out, walking down the hallway. Time sped up. It was the boys' graduation ceremony, and he waited for his team to be called. Team 7, under the direction of Junin Sensei Arashi Jiraiya, Kato Shizune, Uzumaki Kushina, and Namikaze Minato. He saw, in life again, a boy he'd thought of as the son he'd never had. Raised in a team alongside two other orphans, one of whom was his unknowing cousin. He saw them live again, breathe again. And then, in the Kyuubi attack, he watched as Minato raced through the hand seals of the Shiki Fuin. Kushina, barely clinging to life, watched as her husband gave up his own. Naruto, my sweet boy. I'm sorry, she said, crying. This shouldn't have been your burden. Her chains of chakra held the Kyuubi down, and the grim hand of death reached out as one with its summoner. Jiraiya watched the fox's chakra tether itself to the newborn boy's navel, and in that moment the world had stopped. Orochimaru bowed his head, turning to look away. Tsunade turned to Jiraiya, looking for the silent confirmation of what she already knew. Her son, the child she gave up and never knew, was about to die. He would leave behind a son, her grandchild, who she would never know as family either. She had been gone for the last 6 years, but had returned at Jiraiya's request in order to help with the birthing process for her unknowing daughter-in-law. By the time she arrived, it had already been far too late. Their shame was palpable. If anyone should have given their lives to stop the beast, it should have been them. They, the Sandaime, anyone else. In that second where all the world stood still for Konoha's shinobi, any one of them would have chosen to give their lives so that their Hokage and his wife could live. Two people that strong couldn't just be gone. Not like that. That was wishful thinking, however. Jiraiya had seen Minato's hands move, blood for the summoning leaking down to smear on his palms. His name is Naruto. He is a hero to this village. The light was beginning to leave the Yondaime Hokage's eyes. Naruto, one day, I hope you and I can meet again, in a better world. Before his lifeless body could hit the ground, Jiraiya had caught him. No, he shouted. Minato had not been his, had never been his, but it didn't matter to the white-haired Sannin. His son was dead. When Jiraiya came to, he was laying sideways on the ground. Did I fall asleep? No, the genjutsu passes through you eventually, though I don't need it to hold any longer than a few seconds in order to kill someone once it takes hold of them. That was horrific. Living through it once was bad enough. Oh, you saw the past. What did you see? My son died in my arms on the night the Kyuubi attacked. The awkward silence that followed would remain unbroken, wind blowing through the grass as the pair neither looked nor spoke to one another. Jiraiya's greatest wound, worse than Orochimaru's betrayal or anything that happened during either of the wars he'd fought in, had just been reopened and salted. And he'd asked for it. Tayuya, for her part, didn't feel too bad. It had been more than half a year, and the older ninja was still keeping secrets from Naruto. She'd intentionally made the technique a little more cruel because of that, not that Jiraiya would notice. Jiraiya was very, very angry. Enraged at his own stupidity and incompetence, in the past and the present, he wandered off to find a place where he could calm down. Tsunade had been so young, and he'd never liked Dan. The older man had been too suave, with his personality that seemed tailored to making Tsunade fall in love. She was 15, he was 26, and she had been smitten like a schoolgirl. Even his death hadn't been enough to reconcile Jiraiya to the predatory man's memory, and he'd spat on the corpse after Tsunade had left its side. He had always been so kind, too kind, in all likelihood. Too benevolent. That was the effect that being taught by Sarutobi Hiruzen would have, though. Or, at least, that was the effect he had on Jiraiya. Tsunade had become crippled by the support she was always given, and Orochimaru had always sought for a way to end the suffering of others because of how his parents had died in the end of the First Great War. 3 gentle souls, believing in all the good of the world. That was what they had been. How had they come out like this? Tsunade was a political wreck. Orochimaru had turned from being a medical scientist and a brilliant ninjutsu master into a man whose fear of death was so severe that he developed a jutsu to transfer his soul into another person's body. And Jiraiya himself, a man filled with nothing but regrets for all the lives he couldn't save or salvage, all the people he'd failed, and the weight of Konaha on his shoulders. In truth, if one of the 2 remaining Sannin had to take the position of Hokage, then the logical choice would have been Jiraiya. Tsunade had spent her entire life running away from her problems, drowning herself in gambling and alcohol to try filling the void of all the people she'd been made to leave behind. Even now, he doubted that she was over the deaths of her brother and lover. Tsunade was not a woman who was able to achieve acceptance, in the stages of grief. The Gamma Sennin, however, was equally lazy and unwilling. He'd been convinced that becoming Hokage would do Tsunade a lot of good, as well as unite Konoha behind the strongest kunoichi it had ever produced. In the former area, he'd been right. In the latter, however, he'd been amazingly wrong. The drunk, gambling woman had swayed a lot of hearts to her cause, most of them young or civilian. The older, more experienced ninja in the village had wanted to see Hatake Kakashi sworn in as the Godime when Jiraiya refused to accept the title. Danzo had also been a relatively popular choice for his accomplishments in all 3 of the great wars that had rocked the elemental nations, though many people were also concerned due to his age and his hawkish tendencies towards foreign relations. There was no leader who could unify Konoha. They would just have to accept that, and move on. Hashirama and Tobirama had been well loved by all, and Hashirama had even been greatly respected among the Uchiha for his inclusive policies so as to make sure they weren't left out of village affairs. While Tobirama has been the opposite. Hiruzen had been appointed during the First War, after Tobirama's death in battle, and his skill with jutsu as well as diplomacy made certain that the war ended as quickly as possible. This, included with the length of his monumental reign, had made him Konoha's most memorable Hokage. Minato had been a bit of an oddball choice, as most of the shinobi had assumed the Sandaime would appoint Orochimaru as his successor. The White Snake hadn't been too bothered, for reasons that became evident several years later, but Minato had distinguished himself as an army of one in the Third War with the Hiraishin technique, an art that combined ninjutsu and fuinjutsu with incredibly lethal results. He was popular, and in the years prior to his early death he'd only grown more heroic in the eyes of the village. If anyone could do it, Jiraiya thought to himself, then it would probably be the student he was training now. You have a summoning contract? Ray said, incredulous. Yeah, with the toads. Naruto replied. The boss, Gamabunta, has fought 2 Biju, the Ikibi no Tanuki and the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Wow. Naruto Oni, you're so cool. Kuga said. You wanna know what else is cool? He looked between the 2 children and Oboro, who was standing farther away. Watch this. With very little warning, the Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu came to life, and suddenly the 3 red-headed Uzumaki were surrounded with more blonde than they'd ever seen in their lives. Naruto Mago, how many did you just make? I have no idea, honestly. Ero Sennin still hasn't loosened up this chakra-stopping seal, so I'm operating on like 1% right now. That just used up most of it. 1,000, 2,000, more. Uzumaki had naturally stronger chakra, and deeper reserves, than most other ninja. Looking at this display, though, Naruto had the reserves of at least 5 Uzumaki. They disappeared, and Naruto was left with a sheepish grin on his face. Oh, he was definitely her grandson, alright. Every single member of her family had to be able to do some reckless, ridiculous thing that would have left anyone else dead. Tell me, do any of you 3 know what your chakra weapons are? Chakra weapon? Kuga asked. Yeah, I'm lost. Naruto agreed. It's something unique to the Uzumaki clan. Oboro said. So I'm not surprised you didn't know, since nobody would have been able to teach you. Focus your chakra into your hands, and then let it shape itself. Rei, Kuga, you 2 first. The twins did as instructed, until the chakra was visible around their hands. Let go. A pair of katar formed in Rei's hands. The weapons, collectively billed as punching daggers by most weapons merchants, were designed to fit over the fingers like brass knuckles, and operate as such, with the only difference being a blade that extended outward. Kuga, on the other hand, had bladed gauntlets form around his hands. The metal was ribbed, every rise and fall in the gauntlets visibly razor sharp. A punch from either hand would likely shred right through anything that wasn't samurai armor. Naruto, your turn. Time to experiment, then. Naruto's voice had an edge to it as he began to channel 2 different chakras. In his right hand, the flame-red chakra of the Kyuubi. In his left, the chakra that was his own. In his right hand, the falx that had been made for him appeared. In his left, a chain struck outward until it hit the ground, though Naruto made a path with his eyes that it followed. You're its Jinchuriki, then. Oboro said, looking at the sword in Naruto's hand, unsealed to its full size. The blade was 4 feet long from base to top, and the scythe-like curve that the blade followed was almost 2 feet long. Its blood channel was roughly carved, seemingly dug out by shoving a screwdriver into the middle of it. The metal was shaped crudely, and looked as though it had been washed by dripping acid down its width. The blade's edge was on the inside of it, its hilt had no guard on it, and the intention was clearly to swing it like an axe or lop off an enemy's head by pulling it backwards. The metalwork in Naruto's hand was a monstrous sword. No. It wasn't really a sword, Oboro thought to herself. It was too big, too thick, too jagged and too curved. It was more like a slab of metal. It was something the Jia clan could have made, but they had all been slain in the Second War. Even if it had been made by a survivor, they would have needed a raw concentration of the Kyuubi's chakra. Hey, it worked. Naruto grinned. And yeah, I am. Got the Shiki Fuin on me to prove it, too. Oboro Obaa-chan, what's a Jinchuriki? Kuga asked. Naruto and Jiraiya wandered off the beaten path of Uzushiogakure, and the blonde assumed that this must have been one of the village's training grounds. I think you're ready for a real spar against me. Jiraiya said. Really? Yeah, really. I won't be going completely all out on you, and you should avoid using the Kyuubi's chakra, but I think it's about time I took the kid gloves off. Sound good to you? Oh, yeah. Get ready for me to grind your ass into the dirt, Ero Sennin. You're still 30 years too young, brat. I'm gonna enjoy mopping the floor with your face. Bring it on. The teacher and student duo were being watched by the other 4 members of their group, but neither of them cared enough to notice. It was time for a genuine test of wills between the two, to see just how far Naruto had come in the last 7 months. So, how do you want to start this? The forest around them gave ample room to hide, as well as mimicking their home territory. Jiraiya made a few hand seals, and Naruto felt the familiar buzz of chakra return to his system. The limiter on his chakra had been released. Momentarily, both levels of the slog seal currently on him had been let go as well. He was at full strength and speed. Go nuts, kid, the older man grinned. Suddenly, he was surrounded by clones advancing toward him. Before Jiraiya could react, some of the basic clones phased through him and a couple of the Kage Bunshin managed to knock him up into the air. Naruto's control had gotten good enough that he could mass-produce generic, illusory clones just as well as shadow clones. Futon. Tikiatsu. Naruto called out, his clones vanishing without dispelling. In the few seconds that it took Jiraiya to cast the defensive Doden, Doaki no Jutsu in order to protect himself, the blonde original was gone as well. Once the cyclone finished grinding into the wall, and Jiraiya saw the lack of neon yellow hair around him, he grinned. The hunt was on, and Naruto's stealth was well renowned in Konaha. The boy could evade Anbu search teams with ease. He had a preternatural gift for finding shortcuts and pulling pranks. That last one hit home without warning when he felt a draft between his legs, an orange jacket darting off to either side of him and his pants around his feet. Imitating a technique he'd seen used by Sunagaku's puppet masters, Jiraiya extended chakra strings from his fingers and pulled the clothes back up. When the paint bomb dropped from above his head, Jiraiya batted it into the trees, splattering bark with fluorescent pink dye. You can't treat it like a game, Naruto, he said, feeling eyes on him from every direction. I'll do whatever I want, Naruto said, walking out. You're just a clone. Where's the real one? No, I am the real one. Maybe. At least, I'm real right now, aren't I? Besides, I'm trying to show off all my escape plans. Pranking you is just a fun bonus. Jutsu are cool, but it's how you use them that makes them cooler. Even having said that, Naruto turned himself around and shook his rear, mocking the Sannin for his inability to land a hit. When Jiraiya swung, however, Naruto's own Doaki technique rose up. While the blonde boy had no affinity for Doden techniques, Jiraiya had still thought it would be important to make sure he knew them, in order to counter enemy futon jutsu in the future. Now, with his right arm stuck in the wall and unable to be yanked out, he wondered if that decision had been a little premature. Using Kage Bunshin to train in jutsu almost felt like cheating, but he'd made a promise to himself that he would make Naruto the best ninja that boy could be. As a clone came in on his left side, aiming to hit him in the legs, he hopped up, only to get plowed in the chest by another one from the opposite side. Raiden. Raigania, Naruto said, the Raiden chakra causing his own Doden technique to crumble while it shocked Jiraiya's arm into numbness. Once again, when the dust settled, there was a distinct lack of blonde teenage boys surrounding him. This wasn't Naruto the ninja. It wasn't the Naruto who'd been seen in the Chunin exams, the invasion of Konaha, or even the mission to retrieve Sasuke. This was the Naruto who had grown up on the streets of the slums, kicking empty soda cans around to play soccer and always looking for the better exit when he stole something that he wanted. This was the Naruto who'd painted the Hokage monument in broad daylight, and gotten away before being caught. This was Naruto, in his element, at his best. Finally time for me to get started, I think. You've had your fun, kid, but this is where my show starts. Kaden. Ankai no Taiho. Jiraiya hopped up, fire dropping from his open mouth to touch the ground, and that was when the real Naruto knew it was time to get serious. Waiting in the tree line, he felt a surge of chakra come back as the ground was crushed by the force of the party cannon technique, his clones dispelling as the wave of flames reached them. He came out of hiding, landing on the ground without a sound behind Jiraiya, and sent chakra chains through the ground in front of the man. As Jiraiya jumped backward to avoid the blow, Naruto swung with the back of the falx to knock his teacher out. One Kawarimi later, the Sannin's body replaced with a log, Naruto spun backward and blocked a shot from Jiraiya's kunai. I appreciate the thought, but you don't need to hold back with me. If you actually manage to kill me, then I've taught you enough. The blade spun around in Naruto's hand as he reversed his grip on the handle, ready to wield it as it was intended. His index finger rested just below the top of the handle, where the leather no longer covered it. Though the sword didn't technically have a guard, the metal was shaped to curve in such a way that the blade's edge stuck out an inch past where his fingers rested, which gave the illusion of one. Naruto swung, and the kunai Jiraiya blocked with got a deep gouge in it for his trouble, almost all the way through. Had the tip hit, and not the length of the blade, then the smaller knife would likely have been struck from Jiraiya's hand, or shattered completely. Mentally noting that he needed to thank Higurashi, Naruto grinned before jumping back. Two of his shadow clones came out as they were cast, one vanishing with a shunshin as the real Naruto charged forward. The pair of shuriken Jiraiya threw at him didn't even faze the blonde, letting them tag him in the gut as he prepared to crash into Jiraiya with a killing blow. When he did, however, the man burst into smoke. It has been a shadow clone. When you use the Kawarimi, Naruto realized, rapidly healing skin causing the shuriken to fall out of his intestines. That's when you made the clone and hid. God, what a bait and switch. You complain about me using clones, and then you start. Hypocrite. You and I are one and the same. What do you think you're doing right now, complaining about the only clone I've made so far? You and I are nothing alike. There was steel in Naruto's voice, and Jiraiya could tell that he'd touched a nerve. Now fight me for real, this time. No more clones from either of us. No weapons. I'm gonna take you down with nothing but ninjutsu. Big talk. You've got a lot of chakra, but not many jutsu, oh well. Go ahead and try. Kaden. Gukyaku no Jutsu. The ball was 3 times as tall as Jiraiya, and the flames had barely left Naruto's lips as his hands went through memorized seals. Futon. Fujin Ken. The large, focused column of wind struck his grand fireball, almost mimicking a second Uchiha technique, the Hausenka no Jutsu. Unlike the Phoenix Fire, however, his technique was a bit more powerful, and terrain-consuming. Doden. Yomi Numa. Jiraiya called out one of his signature Doden techniques. The underworld swamp ran deep, and as Naruto cast his second Ragania, the lightning field technique, Jiraiya prepared his next attack. Sweden. Mizu Dongan. The aptly named water bullet shot from Jiraiya's palm, splashing the ground in front of Naruto and wetting him enough that his own Raiden technique rebounded to strike him. Had enough yet? Not even close. You know, watching Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke perform it so many times, I couldn't help but watch their hands. Monkey. Dragon. Rat. Bird. Ox. Snake. Dog. Tiger. Monkey. The sound emanating from Naruto's hand was not the chirping of 1,000 songbirds, it was the cawing laughter of 1,000 crows. Raiden. Chidori. Even though his arm was nearly 2 feet above the ground, a line dug itself into the ground wherever it moved. Took him long enough. Naruto's last shadow clone saluted, vanishing in a puff of smoke. Gonna need your help here, Kyuubi. He communicated, feeling its corrosive chakra take hold of his left arm while lightning encased his right. I remember when that technique was invented, Naruto. I know its weakness. Jiraiya said, the smile gone from his face as he looked around himself. Naruto's big talk and combination technique, even the countering of his Yomi Numa, had all been a decoy that he'd failed to notice. That clone had wrapped Garad ninja wire, likely a spoil of cleaning through Uzushio's rubble, around a very tight ring of trees. He hadn't even seen the clone, another testament to Naruto's stealth prowess. Maybe, Naruto said, left eye becoming red as he gave into his rage. But you haven't seen what I've been practicing on my own, with this or anything else I've done. Naruto drew out 8 kunai, 2 between each finger on his left hand. Every one had the kanji for teleport brush painted onto its surface. Bastardized as it might have been, Jiraiya remembered what that technique was capable of. Namikaze Minato had torn through a whole battlefield, practically by himself, with the Hiraishin. On 8 separate tree trunks around them, a kunai was buried nearly to the ring after being thrown. You shouldn't keep secrets from me. The other eye was claimed, demonic red shining in place of Naruto's normal blue. Or else I'll get really mad. This is the true flying thunder god. No longer intent on wasting time, Naruto ran forward, but he was too fast to redirect himself as Jiraiya moved out of the way of his strike. The man's counterattack proved useless, however, as Naruto willingly lost control of his left arm to the Kyuubi. It broke backwards at the elbow, accompanied by a sickening crack that made Rei and Kuga queasy from their vantage point. Catching the hand chop meant to knock him out, the blonde was gone without any warning. The sound of Naruto's Chidori was a giveaway, however, and Jiraiya turned around to see Naruto moving into attack from behind him, with his left arm healed and in its normal place. Once again, the technique's tunnel vision gave Jiraiya time to escape, and Naruto's inability to redirect in midair made him crash into the ground. Springing up by his hands before he lost all of his momentum, he vanished again, this time coming at his mentor from the side. Missing for the third time, Naruto's frustration got the best of him. In truth, all of those kunai were clones with strong henge placed over them, and every time he vanished was nothing more than a kawarimi with that disguised clone. Of course, he had been trying to replicate his father's signature jutsu, but all his efforts had proven fruitless thus far. They might never turn out to work, and that was an eventuality he was prepared for. Still, the look on Jiraiya's face had been nothing short of priceless. He paid no mind to his right arm, though blood was starting to leak profusely as the lightning and Biju chakra combined to peel and char his skin. One last charge had Jiraiya backed against two walls, leaving him with only the option to jump in order to evade the attack, which gave him the perfect vantage point to watch as Naruto did possibly the stupidest thing he'd ever seen. He shoved the Chidori through his own arm, the Kyuubi's chakra keeping it tethered like a flail to its handle, and directed it to grab a hold of Jiraiya's shirt before slamming him into the razor wire behind him. Tell me why, Naruto ordered. Tell me why. Why did they do it? Why did you try to keep it a secret from me? What the fuck kind of good could come out of that? Ha 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 ha. Jiraiya was laughing from a mix of irony and remembrance, feeling the wires cut into his back and legs. He really hated that I never told him who his parents were. The white-haired Sannin passed out, and Naruto's severed arm threw him into the ground as hard as he could. Even though he wanted to cut loose, he reined the Kyuubi's chakra back in as his arm reattached itself and he stopped channeling chakra into his Chidori. Getting in a chakra-level pissing contest with a Jinchuriki, God, Tsunade Obaa-chan was right, you really are stupid. His kunai henged clones all returned to normal, and one tree walked until it was over the garrote fence before beginning to unwind it. Though he couldn't sense where they were, he called out to his watchers anyway. You don't have to pretend like you aren't there, he's going to need someone to take care of those cuts. What were you thinking? Tayuya wasn't angry, she was concerned. Even her tone was questioning, not the commanding anger that he was used to after something like this. I was pissed. Nothing I was doing was working, and even though he doesn't know I already know, he's still keeping my dad a secret from me. Naruto, the idea wasn't to go full tilt. He's one of Konoha's most powerful ninja, Tayuya took a moment to breathe, slowing herself. It was just to see how far you'd come and figure out how much else he needed to teach you, I think. Then he shouldn't have worded it the way he did, like his victory was a sure thing. Naruto replied, still a little angry. He gave me no restrictions, like it wouldn't matter that I'm technically the most dangerous person in Konoha since I can voluntarily lose control to the Kyuubi if I want to. I won't, but I could. Naruto. She understood. Fighting against a cocky opponent could be infuriating, particularly when they were strong enough to back it up. I know, it's stupid. I'm stupid. It's one of my less endearing traits. He laughed derisively at that. You know, I think I liked it better before I was in the academy and became a ninja, when everybody was out for my blood. At least they were honest. He laughed again. Naruto, stop it. Oh, God, here we go. What's next? He doubled over, her fist deep in his gut. Punch. Naruto sat back up, head against the wall as he looked at the sky. You really need to watch what you fucking say, piss brain. Tayuya continued. You got to work out how you felt with Birdshit Sensei. Does that mean I get to pummel you into next week? He's the only one who has conflicted feelings about you. Naruto still wouldn't meet her gaze, even as she kept talking. The twins think of you like an older brother and a leader. Oboro-san is your grandmother. And she trailed off. He watched a particularly interesting cloud pass by. Maybe Shikamaru had been right, this was pretty therapeutic. I keep trying to tell you, or show you, that I care. And you never do anything about it. At that, he closed his eyes and smiled. Yeah, I know. It's bad of me, and it's not like I can't help it, but, how do I explain it? It's not that I don't have any attachment to you. We've known each other, lived with each other, for more than 7 months, now, right? He waited for her agreement to continue. Yeah, so that's not the issue. The problem is, I have a real shitty history with getting attached to people. I gave up the chance of having a home so that Ten-chan could have one. I chased after Sakura for years, against better judgment, even though there was no way in hell she'd ever look at me when Sasuke was an option. I can't tell you how many times she beat me into the ground just for talking to her, at least, until I got stronger than her. Sasuke, honestly, is probably my best friend. You've seen the holes he put in my chest. So you're scared of what'll happen to you if you try to get close to anyone else. When he opened his eyes again, he looked at her. I'm not gonna stop us doing what we've been doing, though. I've gotten too used to being around you. Besides, I'm not telling you no. All I'm saying is that I need to deal with my own issues first, before I can really think about letting someone else in. Yeah, I gotcha. She sat down next to him. You're not upset. I might be, just a little bit, but I think you're right. I haven't really tried to deal with everything that's fucked up in my head from when I was still in Oto. You were, not a distraction, I guess, but it's like you were trying to avoid doing something you really didn't want to do. I get that, it's fine. He remembered Zabuza's words. In this world, people are either tools or wielders. That boy is my weapon, and I will use him until he breaks. If he was a tool that Tayuya needed to use in order to heal herself, then by the Kiri Nukenen's definition he would either be used, or he would use her in turn. He wasn't sure if he was comfortable with that line of thinking. The clouds passed by overhead, leaving the sun to shine on in their wake. Sorry. Jiraiya gave the word as a peace offering. He stood a few feet away from Naruto, who was repeatedly hitting a wooden pole in front of him. I'm not. Naruto's glare was cold, the scarring around his left arm a reminder of how far he was willing to go in order to win. You deserved that. Yeah, I didn't expect you to try that hard. Jiraiya frowned, knowing that his own attitude was likely to blame for the viciousness Naruto had displayed in the latter portion of their fight. He had a 5-pointed, if misshapen, star that was carved into his chest from where the blonde's severed arm had grabbed a hold of him, the burned scar a physical reminder to never underestimate the most unpredictable ninja that Konaha had ever produced. Naruto could see the other man in his peripheral vision, arms folded and a neutral expression on his face. That was the look he had when he was trying to hide something. Say what's on your mind, Ero Sennin. How did you know about it? Oh, God, let me get a list. Of course, he couldn't say that someone had told him. Kakashi had been very upfront about the fact that passing the knowledge on to Naruto would be grounds for the Sharingan wielder's execution. How about the fact that I look just like him? Maybe the fact that the Shodime's wife was an Uzumaki and one of the Kyuubi's previous Jinchuriki, and I'm a Jinchuriki, so it stood to reason that the Yondaime Hokage's Uzushio-born wife might have been the missing Jinchuriki between us. You taught him, he taught Kakashi, and Kakashi taught me. Fuck. His face was on the side of a goddamn mountain, and nobody connected the dots whenever they saw me. Oh, and you expect me to believe some bullshit mandate that the Sandaime made because he was afraid of enemy taking action against us for things that happened during a war. People die during war. People kill other people during war. That's what war is. When the war is over, you say, well, it fucking sucks that all these people are dead, but there's not really much else we can do about it, and you move the fuck on. Individual grudges only mean something if you're willing to circumvent your cage and become a new canon over it, which most people aren't. Something told Jiraiya that the line of thinking in Naruto's brain hadn't gone on in his sensei's, though the short-lived war with Kumo after the Kyuubi attack which resulted in the Sandaime Raikage's death was evidence enough that Naruto's thought process wasn't always true. And also, one last thing. Naruto continued. I know that all married couples have their names put next to one another on the memorial stone, and I doubt that Uzumaki Kushina was married to Sarutobi Bawako. Jiraiya chuckled a little at that, and felt the tension between the two of them lighten up a little bit. Yeah, I actually taught your mother, too. And Shizune. Really? Yeah, Shizune used to be a really big crybaby, always worried about what her Uncle Dan would think looking down on her from heaven. She's just as talented as your parents were, but she hated killing. I didn't want her kindness to get destroyed by the war, so I signed the release form saying that my team would be dissolved and that Shizune would begin her medical training. How'd she end up with Tsunade? On the night of the Kyuubi attack, we were all holding a line of defense. And we watched your parents give their lives to defeat it. There were a lot of regrets that night, but Shizune was probably the worst of us. Her two best friends had just died. All three of them were clanless kids who grew up in the same orphanage, and went through the academy together, and got put on a team together. She couldn't believe they were dead, and she went into a 3-day coma from chakra exhaustion trying to heal them. After that, she decided that she couldn't stay, so my sensei decided to let her make her way to Tsunade, thinking that they might be able to do some good for each other. Hiruzen Jiji was a good man. Better than most people I've known. Jiraiya agreed. Say, what do you know about Kurigakure? I met a couple Nukenin from there, once. Momochi Zabuza and his assistant, a boy named Haku. Then you know about the bloodline purges. Naruto nodded. Well, Kiri is actually in the middle of a civil war right now. The Mizukage is winning pretty handily, since most of the village is too afraid of him to stand up to him, but there's a resistance fighting back. One of my informants is part of that resistance. If you're interested, we can leave Uzushio at any time and go to fight with them. Have you talked to the others? Only Oboro. She's not excited at the prospect of sending you off to war, but she thought it would do you a lot more good than staying in an empty village. Well, if I'm going anywhere, then you know Tayuya-chan will be too. And it'll be a hard sell to just leave the twins behind, even if Oboro Obaa-chan stays with them. That's true, but, even though they were born during the Warring Clans period, it would make me uncomfortable to make kids that young fight. They had turned 9, according to them, about a month and a half ago. Though they accepted the lessons they were given, as battlefield combat was all Jiraiya and Oboro had taught them so far, they were frustrated with the fact that they weren't getting the same treatment as Naruto and Tayuya. When Hashirama Itoko and Madara Itoko were 9, they had already been fighting in the wars for 2 years. Two-san never let us, though. We wanted to impress him enough that he led us on the battlefield. They were insistent that yes, they were much stronger than they looked, and they could probably manage to beat anybody they came across if they felt like it. Unfortunately, no, they couldn't exactly prove how much stronger they were than they looked, nor could they provide the names of anyone who they'd beaten. That meant, much to their displeasure, that they were relegated to practical learning, not battlefield application. Alright, I'll tell them. Naruto said. One last question. I've never heard of the Namikaze. How'd he come up with that? Oh, that. His chakra natures were Futon and Suiten. Even though his technique was called the Hiraishin, it was actually a combination of Futon chakra and high-level Fuinjutsu, along with the Senjutsu techniques I'll teach you before we're back in Konaha. Also, his nickname as the Kiro Senko was from his hair, and people associate yellow with Raiden, so the name stuck. Well, that was one mystery solved. So, wait. You, and me, and Birdshit Sensei. The three of us. We're going to go into live territory and we're going to help the losing side. I'm getting this correctly. If we fuck up, you know how bad Konoha's head is gonna be on the chopping block with Kiri. Naruto didn't know exactly when Tayuya had started treating herself like she was a Konaha kunoichi, but he liked it. Yeah, but it's no fun to pick the winning team. Root for the underdog, all that jazz. Besides, if we do it right and the rebels win, do you know how good we'll get in with their new regime? That kind of stuff just isn't forgotten. Right, like Uzushio's partnership and close ties with Konaha. She rolled her eyes to one side, in an oh right, that, sort of gesture. Fuck you. Besides, Kiri is a major nation. I've been ready and waiting for months now, piss brain. And, fuck, whatever. Go ahead and count me in. Not like I can trust you to watch your own ass. You stare at my ass. I mean, statistically, somebody's got to. Might as well be me. Goddamn it. You met Ino once, and she turned you into a pervert. Shithead, you really must be as stupid as you say you are. Who's the one that you've had teaching you all kinds of shit? What the fuck is your name for him? The wheels in Naruto's brain kept turning, until they finally stopped clicking into place. Ero Sennin. What does he do in his free time? Right, terrible smut. Wait a second, are you saying that traveling with me and Ero Sennin turned you into a perv? I mean, waking up with your ass on my crotch, or your dick on my ass, didn't exactly hurt any. Don't even fucking pretend you're not the one trying to cuddle me in your sleep. Oh, yeah, like you didn't condition me for it by using my back as a makeshift kotatsu every night for 2 months. For a ninja that claimed to be as stupid as Naruto did, the boy certainly had a way of coming up with excellent points for his arguments. Anyway, though, I'll let Ero Sennin know you said yes. Naruto Oni, what do you mean you'll be disappearing for a while? Ray looked heartbroken. Ero Sennin, Tayuya-chan and I, are gonna be going to Mizu no Kuni for a little bit. Don't worry, just stay here with Oboro Obaa-chan and keep learning everything you can. Maybe then you'll be able to beat me. The red-headed woman nodded, having already agreed to the plan. But, Naruto Oni, we don't wanna be strong enough to beat you. Kuga said, surprising the blonde. Then why are you training? To protect you and Oboro Okaa-san. Ray said, and both of the twins gave the biggest smiles they could. What kind of clan head doesn't have guards? The phrase, clan head, made Naruto's head spin. Me. Not Oboro Obaa-chan. Though the woman was only in her late 20s, physically, she had crushed the reflexive idea that he called her that as an insult. Besides, he was her mago, her first and only grandson. That alone was reason enough to allow him to refer to her so casually. While the twins were like her own children, despite the fact that they were chronologically far older than her, she treated Naruto almost as if he were an adult of equal standing with her. No, Naruto, she said, I was married to him. It wouldn't be my place to take the position. All the Uzumaki I knew are dead, and their spirits belong to the village. I can't leave this place. But you have a home in Konaha. You have people to go back to, people to fight for in flesh, not just memory. You can rebuild the foundations of our clan there, and leave Uzushio's memory to the dead it belongs to. Uzushio is just buildings, Naruto countered. When you've stripped all the equipment and stored it away, when the village's forbidden scroll is gone, and when no people are left, buildings. Memories. But the soul of the Uzumaki rests in those of us who are still alive. Each of us carries the hopes and dreams of all the Uzumaki who got us to this point. He thought of his mother, sacrificing her life to help her husband seal the Kyuubi away inside of a boy they couldn't have known for more than a couple hours. For the good of the village, and the love of a son, they had given him the greatest power in the world, a biju, sealed in his stomach. It had made him feared and hated in Konaha, but it had given him the strength to stand and live on his own. For Naruto, there were no gods and no masters, only the knowledge that his parents did the best they could with what they had, and the idea that he could follow in his father's footsteps. Well said. Oboro smiled. And exactly the reason why I decided to let it fall to you to be the new clan head. On the one hand, he didn't feel old enough to actually be a clan head. When he thought of the ones he knew in Konaha, all of them were in their mid-20s or older, he was still a decade behind them all. On the other hand, he'd never known enough Uzumaki for there to have been a clan of them. That second thought made him smile. Anything else? Before you leave, I want to teach you the contents of the Forbidden Scroll. They're your techniques, or at least, they will be when you formally become our clan head. Knowing your aptitude for learning, it shouldn't take more than a couple days. And you too, she looked at the twins, giving a fake glare, aren't allowed to know any of them. Ah, they both pouted. Okawa-san, that means you have to train us extra special while Naruto Oni isn't here. Yes, children, I know. She smiled. Now, Mago-kun, it's time for you and I to get to work. Naruto's smile matched hers. There was one other thing he'd need to take before he left, if for no other reason than paying homage to his lost family, but he could get that later. My informant will be coming by boat, but we should probably walk out to somewhere that it won't be split apart by the lightning around the village. Walk on the ocean? Are you crazy? Tayuya questioned him. No, but he is. Jiraiya pointed at Naruto. When he makes shadow clones, each one gets an equal portion of his chakra, and his reserves are beyond massive. A clone can carry me, and he can carry you. That sounds a little more like abusing my ability to expend chakra at will, rather than a plan. Whatever, I'll do it. A single cage bunshin appeared, picking up Jiraiya and blasting off into the water as the Sannin directed. Your turn, Tayuya-chan. Once he had her riding piggyback, he took off. After almost an hour of racing along the waves, they made their way to a small strip of an island where they could rest. Naruto's clone dispersed, and from there it was a waiting game for the boat to arrive. They didn't have to wait long. While it wasn't moving incredibly quickly, the boat appeared on the horizon within 15 minutes. Wait a minute, is that? No, never mind, it can't be. Naruto said, squinting as he tried to make out who was steering the small ship. You might be surprised. Jiraiya said, the boat getting closer. Mist began to surround them, and that was when Naruto knew for certain. There are 8 targets. A voice emanated from all around them, and Naruto grinned. Throat, spine, lungs, liver, jugular vein, subclavian artery, kidney, heart. All too many choices, and not enough to go around. So tell me, Gaki, which one should I strike first? Good to see you too, you browless wonder. How's Haku? I'm doing well, Naruto-san. The masked hunter said, though the mist kept them from seeing him. As soon as it had appeared, the mist vanished, showing a beached ship and the 2 Kiri Nukenin. You know, when Jiraiya said that he was bringing help with him, I didn't expect that you would be the help. Zabuza said, armor tape covering his throat and lower face. I really hope you've improved since the last time we met, because those simple tricks won't be enough to make it against the Kurigakure elite. The Mizukage's highest ranks have been crippled thanks to our secession and a few well-placed kills on my part, but the rank-and-file ninja still remember our village's reputation as the Jakiri. They won't hold back on you, so all that playing nice you did on the bridge with Haku won't make it. Don't worry about me. Didn't you already fail to assassinate the Mizukage once? Yeah, and that attack is the one that set off the rebellion. If I'd had Haku with me before I tried to kill him, I might have succeeded. Yeah. Regrets can sit in the fucking past. Tayuya said. Don't we need to keep going? Who's your girl, Gaki? I like her. Much better than the pink one. I'm not. He's just teasing. Haku said, removing his mask. Geez, Haku, you really need to get a scar or something. Naruto said, looking at the Oinen's effeminate face. Everybody's going to keep thinking you're a girl, and your voice doesn't help. You're a boy, Tayuya and Jiraiya both said at once. Is that so surprising? Don't take this the wrong way, but you are literally the prettiest boy I have ever seen in my life. I thought you were a girl the first time I saw you. Oh, Zabuza-sama, is that the reason I wear the mask? It's a little less unnerving. Also, it's good for our cover. The ocean was calm, and the sailing went smoothly once they finally set out. Zabuza made hand signs for a jutsu Naruto didn't know, and after a warning to brace themselves tightly, their boat raced forward on the waves.